Hello, BookTube. As you've probably been able to tell from your subscription feed, there's an event happening on BookTube in March Mystery Madness, in which myself and a couple of dozen other booktubers and bloggers are hosting a celebration of all things mystery. And one of the things I've loved about the videos that I've seen so far is the variety. There's no wrong way to love murder mysteries in the month of March, whether you're returning to old favorites, or you're catching up on the series in which you've fallen behind, or you're breaking new ground. And there are all kinds of mysteries, too, and we'll be talking about those different kinds. March is still young, so I have time to make more videos. Historical, romantic, cozy, police procedural, gritty, violent. There are all kinds of murder mysteries. I love them all, and I have read a large amount in almost all of those kinds of murder mysteries. But as I've kind of mentioned on this channel, regularly, my own concentration lately, in the last 10 years or so, has shifted more and more towards new releases. And by sheer coincidence, the month of March, in addition to being the month for March Mystery Madness, is also an incredible month for new release murder mysteries. One marquee name after another, one established series after another, coming out with its newest installment. And I gathered a list of those to do a kind of March Mystery Madness variation on my TBR-BY in BookTube terms. TBR is to be read, your to be read pile. And at the beginning of every month, booktubers tend to make a video about their upcoming TBR for the month, for the new month that's starting. And on my channel, what I do is a TBR-BY, to be read by you, where I do not so much what I'm going to be reading the upcoming month, but 10 recommendations for you of books that are out right away or that are coming out in the course of the month that I can vouch for, that I can recommend to you. And so I want to do a March Mystery Madness TBR-BY for the month of March, the month that we're now well into. And when I was putting together 10 suggestions for you, I was noticing something that the more I thought about it, the more I realized is an endemic problem with murder mysteries, and also an endemic strength, which is that murder mysteries tend to happen in series. No matter how unrealistic that is, the signpost, the stereotypical shorthand for the unrealisticness of one character continually encountering murders in sometimes a very small and cozy locale, in modern times, is Jessica Fletcher from Murder, She Wrote, where Cabot Cove, Maine, has a higher death rate than Compton or South Central LA or anywhere. And it's always this person at the heart of it all. It's like I've joked many times, if I were a federal law enforcement agent and I went to Cabot Cove and even looked at the newspaper archives without even encountering a new crime, without any new dead body, I would simply go to Jessica Fletcher's house and arrest her for the rest of her life. She's the obvious suspect. But before that, it was Miss Marple and the village of St. Mary Mead, where you would think that it would be unrealistic. And it is. But mystery series writers don't care about that, and the fans who follow those series are willing to suspend their disbelief on that point for the fun of watching not just a protagonist grapple with a vexing conundrum, but a protagonist they know. So it's not just a question of the pure art of detection anymore. Instead, it's personal. Instead, you're watching the character that you've come to associate with a certain bag of tricks encounter a new mystery. And I don't mean to sound dismissive of that at all. I actually love that element of murder mystery series. But when I was putting together this list, I've got it on the MacBook here, I realized how off-putting that's going to seem when these are recommendations. Because if I'm recommending you a book that's deep into a series, and you've never read anything else in that series, I wouldn't blame you at all for wondering whether or not you're going to be able to make any sense out of it at all. And as we've discussed on this channel many times, that is largely the province of the author. In fact, I would say entirely the province of the author. If you can't pick up book 10 in a series read it and enjoy it, the author is doing something wrong. And we all know books and series, whether it's mystery or romance or science fiction, where it's done well and where it's done poorly. When it comes to murder mysteries, one beautiful example that I always use as to illustrate this point is Ellis Peters' Brother Cadfael mysteries, which are totally self-contained. You can enjoy any book in that series. You don't need to start at the beginning, in other words. So I'm going to go through this list here. I recommend all of these books, but some of these recommendations are mainly going to be for those of you who are already reading the series. And I don't know what to say about that. The first one is a perfect example. I actually do them in descending order, just for the fun of it. And the first one is Caribbean Rim by Randy Wayne White, about marine biologist Doc Ford and his buddy and their supporting cast of characters who are, they're down in the Florida Keys, they're solving murder mysteries, and there's lots of atmosphere. And also, Randy Wade White is a fantastic writer. A lot of times when it comes to murder mysteries, including especially murder mysteries in series, that isn't even necessary. It's very quotidian. A lot of the writing is very much just moving pieces around, and you get your enjoyment from other parts of it. But this author really knows how to propel a story forward. He's very good with action sequences, that a lot of murder mystery writers are not, and he's really good with quick character sketch moments that you don't strictly need in novels of this kind. And all that works in his favor. Working against him is that Caribbean Rim, I did a rough mental count, and I believe this is around book 30 in which Doc Ford has appeared. And that's an impossible sell for a newcomer. I have read Caribbean Rim, and of course I've read all the other books, and the other books are uniformly really good. Caribbean Rim is really good, and I was searching my brain when I was reading it, and then immediately afterwards, for whether or not I could recommend this as an entry point for the series. And I think I can. I think Randy Wayne White is one of those authors that does a fairly good job. Not as good as Ellis Peters for the Brother Cadfael mysteries. There's still baggage that accrues. There's momentum that builds up over time. So you will get a lot more out of it if you've read at least the previous 10. Or maybe you stuck with this series from the very beginning. But I do want to recommend it anyway. And from there, we move on to, I think, also in the high 20s. That's an enormous length of time. And that is The Disappeared, the new book by C.J. Box about Wyoming game warden Joe Pickett, who's an all-around action guy. Much like Doc Ford, he's less cerebral than Doc Ford. The books are heavy on atmosphere, heavy on the beauties of the American West and Northwest, and heavy on the action. They're testosterone-dunked adventures. But by this point, C.J. Box knows how to do them like clockwork. And again, despite the fact that this is, I think, in the late 20s, 26, 27, something like that, in terms of a Joe Pickett adventure, I honestly do believe that you could pick it up and read it. There are two strands running throughout The Disappeared that will really be enhanced if you know the previous books, but only two. And I think it's sort of hard to tell after a certain point. I think they're covered fairly well enough. So I do recommend that book if that's the kind of murder mystery that interests you. And then the next one, also in the high 20s, it's a very, very long series, and it's The Temptation of Forgiveness by Donna Leone. This is about Commissario Brunetti on the police force in Venice, and it's about his loving wife and his children who have grown up with the series, and it's about the crimes that take place in Venice and also the atmosphere of Venice, very much the atmosphere of Venice. There are tours that you can take in Venice that highlight locations that have been highlighted in these novels. Donna Leone wrote a book about Venice, a nonfiction book of reflections on Venice. Venice is very much an active location. It's a very well-drawn location. And the plot in The Temptation of Forgiveness is really good. Donna Leone is really good with simple, straightforward plots. She doesn't load them down. There's never a lot of gore. There's never a lot of grit. There's very little in the way of conflicted personalities. Brunetti is one of the most refreshing characters for me in ongoing murder mystery series in that he's a happy man. and that might sound like very little, but it's actually kind of rare. And so I honestly do believe that if you found this book at your library, in the new section, and maybe your library has been purging, maybe they've had budget problems or whatever, what library hasn't? Maybe they don't have all the others. Or even maybe they don't have the highlight of this, the one that has the two Brunetti books that have sold better than all the others in America. The first is Death at La Fenice, and the other is Acqua Alta. And if you've read those two, then you have enough preparation to read any Brunetti book. But maybe your library doesn't even have those. Maybe this is it. And if that's true, I honestly believe you could read this and enjoy it. Maybe with a little bit of background research, maybe on her Wikipedia page or something like that, if she has one. And then the next one is it's a chunker. It's a beast. It's The Punishment She Deserves by Elizabeth George. It's a Detective Inspector Linley novel, but he's joined by Sergeant Inspector Barbara Havers, who's a very different character than he is. He is grounded and cerebral and reserved and gentlemanly and courtly even. And she is much more speak as you find. She's much more straightforward and also a little bit of a mess. I think I get the strong impression she's grown more prominent as the series has gone on. I think this is book 20, I think, in the Linley series. Again, an intimidating number. But it's saved in this case. In Donna Leone's case, for instance, she very consciously strikes a very accessible, sort of eternal tone in her books, in very much with new readers in mind, even though Brunetti's kids are getting bigger. Brunetti's there are incremental changes, but she very much strikes that kind of tone. And that's one way that you can approach the problem of an intimidatingly long backlog in a series. Another way that you can approach the problem is to bring forward secondary characters as time goes on so that the books start to be about them and they don't have quite as long a history. And with Barbara Havers, that's what Elizabeth George is kind of sort of doing, although Linley's too popular with her readers to ever disappear completely. But the fact that there's a give and take really helps the book. And also, it's by far the longest book on the list here, and it's because Elizabeth George really likes big, richly textured books. And because she writes that kind of book, that helps with the accessibility, very much so. Because you get the feeling that you're reading a novel in which a murder takes place rather than a mystery novel, which is a distinction that mystery writers and some writers about mystery as a genre have often held in scorn, but I've read a lot of great books that way. So, and Donna Leone and Elizabeth George also have another odd thing in common, which is that they're both American, and yet they're absolutely associated with different countries. Elizabeth George with England and Donna Leone with Venice. So Punishment She Deserves is a great big thing. It's immersive. It's an immersive read. So if that's what you want, you'll get that. And I believe that you could read it without ever having made Inspector Linley's acquaintance before. And then we'll move on. We're jumping down here from in the 20s to installment 13. So it's a big jump. It's only 13 years. And this is To Die But Once by Jacqueline Winspear, the latest adventure of the amazing Maisie Dobbs, who's a plucky, optimistic, smart, resourceful character, and has been from the very beginning, from the very first Maisie Dobbs book. Unfortunately, even though this is only installment 13, or 12 or 13, I might have lost count, but it's round there. Even though it's far fewer books than any of the books we've mentioned so far, it's actually less accessible. Jacqueline Winspear has been consistently building and broadening her cast, especially Maisie Dobbs herself, to the point where I think, looking back on To Die But Once, I think there are quite a few bits in here where a brand new reader would come to it and say, okay, I'm following along, this is clearly and energetically written, but that bit I didn't get at all. If you'd never read any other Maisie Dobbs book, I think that will happen a couple of times in this book. So, although I strongly recommend this to you Maisie Dobbs fans out there, I also want to accompany it with a strong recommendation to read the first book in the series, which you could find at a used bookstore, or if you don't have access to used bookstores and you don't trust shopping online, and I don't blame you, and you don't want to buy it at your local retail bookstore, or if, like so many of you have told me, you're hundreds of miles away from your nearest retail bookstore, if all that is true, as usual, on this channel, just let me know, and I will find you a copy of the first Maisie Dobbs book, and I will send it to you, no matter where in rural New Zealand you happen to live. Then the next one on the series is 8. We're down to 8. This is installment 8, and this is Memento Mori, not to be confused with the late lamented BookTube channel that has now apparently ceased publication. This is Memento Mori by Ruth Downie, and it stars, it's a historical murder mystery. Most of these are, but most of them aren't that far back in time. They're 20th century still, but Memento Mori is set in 2nd century British Rome and Britannia, and it stars a medical man named Russo and his wife, but it's the 2nd century, so he is, he's a medical man, extremely in name only. It only means he doesn't know anything about medicine at all, but what it means is that the author gets to concentrate on physical peculiarities of the evidence and get him to cogitate on it. What does it mean for a body to look this way? What poison might make it look that way? What does a person's metabolism have to, that sort of thing. You get that sort of biologically oriented clues. And Memento Mori is really, really good. The author does a wonderful job of grounding you with her cast of characters very early on, and also the book's publicity material, the dust jacket, really does all the work that you will need. It's one of those series. All you really need to know is that this guy and his wife have had adventures. And as soon as you know that, you're then immediately sucked in. It's true that one of the major plots of the book involves his best friend, and there is a lot of history in earlier books with him and his best friend. But for the purposes of this book, you only need to know that they're friends and that therefore Russo will do anything he can. And that's handled very well, very early on. So if you're interested in a Roman murder mystery series and want maybe a change of pace from the Roman murder mystery series that always seem to take place in the Roman Forum, well, this is it. You're getting a totally different world. In this case, the city of Bath. Prior to Jane Austen. Then we'll move on from there. The next one is the next 3 that I'm going to do are very small numbers, 3, 2, and 2, in terms of previous adventures. So you can jump right in, and you should, because they're really good. And they're also, because of those low numbers, less well known. So I want to very much stress the recommendation aspect here. And the first one is by Sara Sheridan, and it's called England Expects. And there's a Secret Service agent named Michelle Bevan, and it's her adventures. She has a best friend who helps her out, and she has a good supporting cast. And there've only been hello, Frida. There've only been 3 others. This is the third one. There've been 2 others. This is the third one. So you have a good place to jump on if you like mid-20th century sort of mystery of manners type thing. The Mirabelle is a really good character, and it's abdication era historical fiction, so modern but not so modern. And then the next one is The Affliction by Beth Gutcheon, which I think I've mentioned on this channel before. I think I've hauled it twice now, one in the advanced copy and one in the finished copy, and it's the second book. The first book was last year. Now the second one, so you could easily catch up. Although reading this book, I don't think you need to. I really don't. It stars Maggie Detweiler is our main character, who was a headmistress at a well-respected girls' boarding school forever and ever, and has a kind of headmistress mentality: order, discipline, not taking guff from anyone, basically. And she has a personal history, basically, of being God on earth, unquestioned authority. And the Beth Gutcheon has the inspired decision to give her a great partner, a great partner in their sleuthing adventures, in the form of a mouthy, flighty, opinionated but not particularly intelligent socialite named Hope Babin, and they make a great pair. That for me, the first book, which took place in Maine, the main draw for it was the interaction of the 2 sleuths, and it's really strong in this book too. The Affliction is really strong in this book too. So you're right at the ground level here, and I strongly recommend it. You could, I think, pick this up without knowing anything else about the series. And then the last one we'll do is also fairly unknown. This is also the second in a series. But it's by an author who's done other stuff. But in this series is only 2 books old. The book I'm talking about is Murder at Half Moon Gate by Andrea Penrose. And it stars Lord Rexford and Charlotte Sloane. And Charlotte Sloane is a satirical artist, anonymous, so that people don't know it's her, and a bit of a gadfly on society, and also very well versed in the demi-monde and in what people are doing and what they're saying and what the gossip is. And Lord Rexford is, a member of the landed aristocracy, so he brings a totally different perspective to their crimes, which can get a little gritty. They're all set in Regency England, but they're really good. This one is really, really good, significantly better even than the first one, which was called Murder on Black Swan Lane, which was really good. It was tremendously good. It's just this one is even better. This author is learning quickly, and it's really fun to watch. So if you like mist-enshrouded, Regency urban mystery, then you should find this series, because I think it's going to go on for a long. I think it's going to be really successful, and I highly recommend it. And that you might, if you're keeping count at home, that's 9 books. And the last book has no precedent whatsoever unless you count over 100. And that's because it's a biography. It's Laura Thompson's biography of Agatha Christie, which is new out this month. Big, thick thing called Agatha Christie, A Mysterious Life. That is the latest Agatha Christie biography and also the best one. A tremendously enjoyable book. And it's about the Queen of Crime. So you don't need to know anything about Agatha Christie, and you don't need to have read any of her books. Laura Thompson makes a great story out of it anyway. And if you've read and loved Agatha Christie, well, then you're going to love this book even more. Of course, I had to put a nonfiction item on this list, and that's what it is. I firmly believe that it's the best mystery-related piece of nonfiction that will appear in the month of March, which is the month of March Mystery Madness. So I had to include it. And there you go. That is a March Mystery Madness TBR-BY. And if I remember correctly, I will annotate all of these things down below because I do recommend them. And I recommend most of them as jumping on points, no matter how unrealistic that seems. These authors know how important that is, and most of them attend to it quite well. So I'm going to wrap things up for there, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.